administrator with the Muscle Shoals National Heritage Area. This video is going to take you through the process of applying for one of our community grants. We'll go to the website, we'll look at the application, and give you a couple of quick but very important tips to remember while you're filling out the application. So let's get started. On our website, MSNHA.una.edu, on the very front page, we have a yellow button that says Community Grants Program. So click on that. It is always live. You can always click on the button and go to our grants page. And here on our grants page, it will, if the cycle is open and we're accepting applications, it will tell you the deadline right here. And then everything that's highlighted as a hyperlink is open and you can access it. When we are not accepting applications, some of the forms are closed. The grant guidelines, the facts, the videos are always open. So I hope you've watched our previous video that talks about how to figure out if one of our grants is right for your project. That will answer a lot of questions you have before you even begin the process of applying. So I hope you've watched that video and you know for sure that your project is a great match for one of our grants. So the next thing to do, first of all, let's just take a quick look at the document right there, the Community Grant Guidelines. Now, this is sort of your handbook on how to go through the application. It starts out here with the categories that we fund: assessment, preservation, interpretation workshops, archiving events, productions and art projects, and bus travel. We detail who and what are eligible. We talk about the match contributions, and then go through how to apply. So just a quick recap. Our grant awards are from $1,000 to $10,000. The awards are reimbursable. That means you spend the money first and submit the documentation of what you spent. And when your project is over, and then we reimburse you for that money. So not only do you have to have the money to cover those initial expenses, we also require a one-to-one match. So you have to, with other expenses, other contributions, other in-kind donations, you have to match the amount of the grant award. So those are two important things to remember before you begin the process. And here in this paragraph about matching contributions, we go into detail about what can and cannot count for match. There is also a document on our website, which is right here. These are the NPS, National Park Service rules for what counts as match and what does not count as match in grant requests. So we have to follow these rules right here. I've posted this. This is directly from the Department of Interior, the National Park Service, with the relevant sections highlighted in yellow, so you don't really have to wade through everything. This is just a quick way for you to check when you're thinking about matches and in kind. This just sort of like I said, a quick way to check and make sure you're on the right track. Let's go back to the guidelines document. And remember, to be eligible, you must be within our 6-county area, which is Colbert, Lawrence, Limestone, Lauderdale, Morgan, and Franklin. It also has, your project also has to relate to one of our 3 themes of Native American heritage, the Tennessee River, or music. So we go over that in the previous video, but all that is right here in the guidelines, just to make sure, because if you can't answer yes to any of those questions, then we cannot even consider your grant request, and you would just be wasting your time. If you think that there might be a problem, or you're not quite sure if you can meet all of those criteria, just email us, msnha@una.edu, and we'll figure it out together. So now it comes to the actual application. Excuse me. So here we talk about how to apply. It kind of walks you through what to download. Everything is done online. We submit everything online. A couple times we do require that you give us the hard copies, the original hard copies, but communication between MSNHA and y'all is pretty much always online. The applications are scored. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go through kind of the whole process, and then we'll go back and look at the application in detail, really highlighting those couple of points that are key to submitting a successful application. So you go through the process, you apply, you give us the required documents, and then we send your applications out to scorers. We have a panel of qualified scorers that we ask to help us out, and whoever scores your application will not be from your county and will not have any conflict of interest. So just be assured that we make the process as fair and transparent as possible. Then on here in the guidelines, it talks about more about some of the specific elements of the grant application process. And again, we'll kind of go through all of that relates to the actual application just in a couple minutes. But please read all of these highlighted, all these bullet points right here, just to know what's coming up when you do your final documentation. We also have a video about your final reports and documentation, so when you get to that point, it'll be really helpful. This section here is just a list of the federal regulations that the Muscle Shoals National Heritage Area is funded strictly by federal money from the Department of Interior through the National Park Service and approved by Congress. So we are required to follow these federal regulations, and most of these apply to the Disability Act, to any kind of change that your project might make to an historic structure, or to actual land that has been designated as part of the historic site. So, and there are also some grant responsibilities. We work with the Alabama Historical Commission to follow all state guidelines. So, you know, but we'll help you with those. If any of those apply to you, we will help you. And if we can't give you the right help, we'll get you in touch with the person who can help you. So just be aware that if those apply to your project, we will have to work through them, but you won't be in it alone. We're there to help you out. And the rest of the guidelines is just, again, going over the timeline for application. And there's my contact information with our email address. So now let's look at the application form. It is so very simple. I promise. So what you'll do, you'll just, this form right here is not fillable, so you can just copy and paste it into another document, or whatever your preferred method of transferring that is. So you can see the front page just asks for basic information. But if we ask for it, it's really important that you put it on the application. Again, the heritage area is, we answer to UNA's grant rules. We answer to the state of Alabama. We answer to Congress or National Park Service. So everything we ask of you are things that our overseeing organizations are asking of us. So we don't ask you to give us anything that we're not required to pass on to somebody else. And again, if you have a question about any information that we're asking for, you feel it's not appropriate, or you don't want to release the information, just talk to us about it. We'll work it out. So again, basic information right here. We need you to name your project and also to give us estimated start and end dates. Now, this start date is extremely important because you can't be reimbursed for any expenses that you incur for your project that are incurred before the start date on your contract. So when we get to the contract, of course, we'll make sure that that date is accurate and specific. But here on application, you need to be as specific as you can. Again, when we get to the contract, we'll make sure that that is the actual start date. But just keep in mind that you cannot be reimbursed for any money you spend on your project before the start date that is in your contract. And the contract is not actionable until everybody signs it. So just make sure that you have a realistic start time there. And then you have from 12 months after the start time to complete your project. So that is one of the most important things to remember in this process, is to sort of start with that realistic start date, because it's going to make things a lot easier as we go along. We also need the name of a project director and the best way to contact that director. Whoever's going to be the main point of communication between us and y'all for this grant, that's what we need right there. And then if your project is part of an overall project, like you're asking for help in restoring one room of your historic house museum, but overall you want to restore the whole house for many hundreds of thousands of dollars. So just if this project is part of a bigger effort, just let us know about that, because that's important to understand as we go forward. And then these right here, these three things right here, under goals, actions, and outcomes. Executive summary, just telling us about your project. Um, if you're familiar with doing objectives and goals and outputs and deliverables, just, you can do it as a spreadsheet, as a chart, or just write it out. But we need those specific, the specific purpose of your project, what your goals are, what the money is going to be used for, how is it going to benefit your community, how is it going to tie into the heritage area's mission, and how it fits into overall, again, if it's an overall project, multi-year, multi-stage project, then please tell us about that too, and how your project, how when you evaluate it when it's done, how can you tell if it was successful, if it's a restoration of something, was the restoration done well and successful? This is a performance, how many people attended, whatever measurement you use to evaluate the success of your project. Just tell us about what you intend right there. Okay, so now we come to another really important part of this application. So the timing that we talked about earlier is the first main point that is vital to getting right, is making sure that that start date is realistic, because you can't be reimbursed for anything and you can't claim any match. It's like your project doesn't start for purposes of this grant until that start date on the contract, and that contract is signed. So the next important thing to remember about the application is your actual request. The request that you make here in this application, how you're going to spend your money, how you're going to match it, and if there's any overmatch. Actually, these two charts right here are going to be part of your contract. And that contract is the official document. We work from that contract. It's an official legal document. Everything in there is actionable as soon as it's signed. There are three parties who have to sign it. Our director, we have an interim director now, Dr. Carrie Bars. The vice president for finance at UNA, Dr. Evan Thornton. And then, so those two people sign up, multiple other people and offices and departments on the UNA campus and in the NPS regional office and in the state historic commission office. Look at it, make sure it's all okay. Then it comes to you, you sign it, and then all that has to be done before the start date on the contract, because as soon as that contract is signed, you are the last person to sign it. As soon as that contract is signed, as soon as it gets to the start date, that contract is actionable and you can go with it. So now you can sign it on the same day as the start date. Sometimes that works out, but that is so key to understand. The second most important thing, as we've been talking about, is this money. So I said these two tables will accompany your contract and be part of your contract. So these two tables have to be precise and specific and exactly what you will turn in for your final documentation. In other words, you can't say, oh, we're going to use the money to install a new archival system in our library, but then you decide, no, that's not going to work, and you actually use the money to buy new content, to buy new items to display in your archive. That's not going to work. whatever you tell us here in this application that you're going to use the grant for, that is what ends up in the contract, and that's what you have to actually spend the money on and get the match on, because it's part of the legal document. That's the contract that we have to follow what's in the contract. Now, between the application and the contract, if you have to make some sort of revisions, we'll work on that. We won't, when you sign the contract, we'll make sure that these numbers and everything in there are exactly what you want. But we have to start out being pretty accurate too. So if there's a big change in application and contract, that's going to raise some red flags. And we want to make this process as smooth as possible. So these two tables here, one is the expense table, one is the match table. And the text in these tables is just for example only. So, delete it, replace it. This text is just to show you an example. And it's pretty self-explanatory. So say you're applying for $5,000 to install windows in your historic house. So here you've got it specified. $4,000 is going to go for the labor of the installation. $1,000 is going to go for the actual purchase. And you filled it all out there, added it up, $5,000. So, and this is as detailed as you need to get. We don't need, it's not like a bid process. We at this stage, we don't need the actual documents unless you want to give them to us, but we don't need them. This right here is sufficient. Okay. Then down here in the matching table, now remember that if you're applying for this $5,000 grant, of course, that means you have to have the money to pay those expenses because we'll reimburse you. But then you also have to show us that you are matching that $5,000 with an additional $5,000 of your own money or labor or donation or whatever. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. So say you're going to use a grant from a local arts organization. You're going to use volunteer labor. You can count volunteer labor at $23 per hour. And then you have some additional expenses that you're not charging to the grant award, but that you have to pay. And those can also be claimed as match. So each one of those is acceptable under the NPS document that I showed you before. So you have the volunteer cleaning. We have all that specified here. We've got the local, the grant donation you're going to get, and then this extra expense. So, and this is a good part right here. So you've used those matching contributions, and you've made your $5,000 total match from totaling those, but you have money left over from these items, which leads you to this figure right here, an overmatch. Now, overmatch means that, well, as you can see right here, you have, after you've matched the $5,000 for our grant award, you have other resources and contributions and donations from people beyond what that one-to-one match. And that is a wonderful thing, because when the heritage area then reports back to Congress and the National Park Service and the Department of Interior and UNA, if we can show a significant amount of this overmatch, then that just shows how vital and how important what we do in our community is. because with an overmatch, that shows these oversight organizations that you're not just trying to, get by with what you owe us for the grant award, but you have much more to offer. You're a vital part of the community because you have so many people helping you. You are a viable organization because you've gotten grants from other organizations, and you're able to pay for some of your own expenses. You're not just totally out of money. So all of these things go to show UNA, NPS, Congress, that what you are doing is enriching and enhancing our community, and we need to do more of it. So that's why overmatch is so important. Now, it's not required. All that we require of you is that you match your grant award 1-to-1. But if you can show overmatch, and a lot of overmatch, that's just win-win and good for everybody. So when you come to this part of your grant application, really think about that. And again, everything that you specify here, this is going to end up in the contract, so you actually have to be able to do that. And in the video about final reporting, it shows how to document this, and also that NPS PowerPoint, because there's very specific ways for documenting. If you say we did the 10 hours, 10 volunteers of volunteer labor for window cleaning, then there has to be a specific sign-in sheet where everybody who comes to do that, signs in with their signature, the date and the time that they were there. There has to be documentation of these. With the local arts grant, you have to be able to show us a document where you did receive the money. The expenses here, just like the expenses up there, and expenses, we have to have invoices, receipts. We have to have legible front and back of canceled checks, credit card receipts. All that documentation is detailed in the final report forms and in that NPS PowerPoint. So the key thing here in the application is just to be as realistic and specific as possible. Again, if we need to modify this, by the time we get to the contract, we will. But it is so important to start out as realistic and specific as possible. And then just a budget narrative, just a couple paragraphs about how you can spend the money. Also with your application, we need your IRS letter indicating your 501c3 status, if that's relevant. We do need everyone's W-9 form, or if you're in the process of getting that, then we need a letter stating that. The state of Alabama requires a vendor disclosure statement, and that's under our documents on our webpage, that for any expenditure of $5,000 and more. So if we approve a grant award for you of $5,000 or more, you will need to have this form signed and notarized, and we need the original back. So some applicants, if they're like requesting $10,000, they will go ahead and print out this statement and submit it back with their application. You don't need to do that, but if you're pretty sure you're going to need it, it will just save time. And then the letter from your financial officer saying all your everything you've told us about your finances is correct. So back here to the application, and this is just a timeline and a checklist, again with details on how to apply. And then we have an actual checklist here, which details exactly what you need to include. with your application. And again, you just combine everything together in one document with this, whatever your organization's name is, and the date 2018, and email it to us. And I will, as soon as I receive it, I will immediately email you back with confirmation that yes, we did receive your application. And then we will keep you updated the status as far as the scoring and the approval of the grant awards. We try to move pretty quickly on that. So that is the application process. As you can see, it really is very simple. It's just being aware of those two main points of the start date and the expenses and the match contributions that you specify. Getting those right at this point in the application is going to make everything much, much smoother as we work through this process. And again, the rest of the forms here, you know, there's the state form that we told you about. Here's the documents for the final reports. The sign-in form for volunteers, the forms for documenting your in-kind contributions. We talk about those in the video on final reports. And then the publicity agreement too. You could go ahead and read through this and sign it and give it back to us with your application if you want to. We will need it with the contract. So typically I send it with your finished contract for your signing, but if you want to go ahead and do it now, you know, print it out and sign it, that's fine. We do require, like we say here, if you receive a grant award, we ask you to send a letter and email to your state and federal legislatures, just letting them know about this, so they'll continue to fund the Heritage Area Program. And we have a list of those legislators. I have sample letters that will help you with that. Also, send another letter report to these people who are the people who we work with at UNA. If you, in your promotional materials, if you're interviewed in the newspaper, if you have an ad on your website, on your Facebook page, we ask that you credit us. We can send you logos, we can send you graphics, we can help you write news releases, whatever that you need. We will help you with that. We just, if you acknowledge us as your partner and give us credit for helping you, that just means the Heritage Area's name is out there more people know about it, more people apply for grants, we get more money, and everybody wins. So we just encourage you to help spread the word about what we're doing. And then, you know, you just take photos throughout your event, and you'll need those for the final documentation. And we have a little like yard sale sign that will come and put in front of your project or your event to say it's sponsored by the Heritage Area. And so then there's just the checklist and signature. Again, if you want to include this with the application, you certainly can. But if you are approved, you will be required to sign this and turn it in with your contract. So I hope that helped you work through the application process. Just keep in mind those two main points about the start date and the money. And we are here to help you. We want you to succeed. We want to give away this money. The more money we give, the more we get to give away the next time. There are so many rules and guidelines in place to ensure that this money is used appropriately and honestly. And a lot of this red tape and paperwork might seem superfluous or even kind of silly, but there all is a reason, and that's to ensure that everything is done in the right way. Of course, we all would agree with that. So again, email me any questions. I'm Kathy Wood, the Grants Administrator, email me at msnha@una.edu. And we are here to help you, and I look forward to seeing your application. Thank you.